morning and welcome to Around Kansas. I'm Michelle Martin, your co host. And as you can see today, I am flying solo. Deb is off. She has been feeling a bit under the weather and has lost her voice. I know, it's hard to believe Deb has lost her voice. We wish her a speedy recovery because there's nothing I love more than sitting here with you each week discussing history and events and fun things to see and do in Kansas with Deb. As you can see today, I am taking you to one of my favorite places in Kansas because when Deb's away, Michelle gets to play. And today we are going to Fort Scott, Kansas. Today, I want to share in our history segment a little bit about the fort's founding, its original mission, and the role it played in bringing American Indians into the U.S. Army. So, for those who are not familiar, Fort Scott was founded in 1843 as one of numerous forts that dotted the permanent Indian frontier line. The permanent Indian frontier line ran from Fort Snelling in Minnesota all the way down to Fort Jessup in Louisiana. And the whole goal of the permanent Indian frontier line was to demarcate what was the United States east of the line and what was Indian country or unorganized territory west of that line. All of present day, the Dakotas, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, all of these areas fell in that permanent Indian frontier region that was either unsettled or Indian territory. So, one of the primary objectives of the soldiers who were at Fort Scott was to keep the peace along that line, to keep white settlers and non native people east of the line, and to make sure that the native nations who were west of the line were peaceful. They went out and tried to help settle disputes among Native nations, but they also helped provide services to those who were traveling along the various trails, in particular the Santa Fe Trail. It was not uncommon for soldiers, dragoons, the horse mounted soldiers from Fort Scott, to take off and head west into Kansas and to provide protection for wagon trains making their way to Old Santa Fe along the Santa Fe Trail. You see, Deb's right. We can connect everything to the Santa Fe Trail, even Fort Scott. So, during the 1840s, the fort played an important role as a supply hub. It was along the permanent Indian frontier line, but it was also situated along the military road that ran from Fort Leavenworth down into the Indian Territory. And the supplies that would come into Fort Scott oftentimes got divvied out and sent to places like Fort Gibson in the Indian Territory. So we see lots of letters going back and forth between officers and their wives who are stationed at Fort Scott and Fort Gibson. They write back and forth to one another. They share the news of society and gossip on post. And you get a good picture of how important Fort Scott was in supplying those posts that were in what is now Oklahoma, our neighbor to the south. So fast forward a little bit to 1854 and the passage of the Nebraska Kansas Act. That means all of a sudden that Kansas and Nebraska are no longer going to be Indian country, but new territories on the road to statehood. So the need for some of those military posts, like Fort Scott, begins to wane a little bit. The military decides to go ahead and auction off the buildings of the post, and it becomes the kind of the nucleus of the town of Fort Scott in the 1850s. And of course, during the Bleeding Kansas era, it is the scene of many turbulent and tragic events that take place. But with the outbreak of the American Civil War, Kansas entering the Union as a free state, the fort once again is recommissioned by the military. And we begin to see troopers here once again. And as the war breaks out, and as we see fighting in the Indian Territory in particular, we see an influx of refugees, of American Indians from the Muskogee, Seminole, Shawnee, Sac and Fox. Uh, we see Kickapoos. We see Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw. We see numerous Native nations. We see people from the Indian Territory making their way north to Kansas. These are individuals who either did not want to participate in the war and believed that it was not a war for Native people to fight, or they were Native people who believed in and followed the Union cause and fled their homes in the Indian Territory to escape those members of their own nation sometimes who sided with the Confederacy. One of the most important individuals who lead Native people into Kansas during this time period is Ovato Yahola. He is a Muskogee statesman, orator, and leader. And in 1861, he leads nearly 10,000 men, women, and children on a trek from the Indian Territory, fighting running battles, defending his people against Confederate troops that are pushing on their heels before they make their way into Kansas and what is known as the Blood on Ice campaign. It is said that you could see a trail of blood on the ice and snow because, in some cases, the individuals did not have proper or adequate footwear. Their footwear had worn out as they were marching up toward Kansas. And so you see people's frostbitten feet bleeding on the snow. But one of the places many of the refugees ended up was Fort Scott. Fort Scott served as a refugee hub during the war, taking in African Americans escaping Missouri, leaving Missouri, escaping to freedom across Union controlled lines in Kansas, and for American Indians and enslaved peoples who are coming up out of the Indian Territory. We begin to see these refugees amassing in Kansas, and Fort Scott takes in these refugees. But one of the most important things that happens at Fort Scott during the Civil War, along with taking in refugees, along with providing protection for southeastern and eastern Kansas from Confederate incursions out of Missouri into the region. But also, we see the Kansas colored troops, the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry, is mustered into service at Fort Scott, but also the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Regiments of Indian Home Guard. And many of those troopers are those refugees who walked their way in the bitter cold with Ovato Yahola in late 1860, 1861, were making their way up. Actually 1861, 1862, excuse me, that made their way to the fort seeking protection. And many of the men joined the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Regiments of Indian Home Guard. They, in turn, would be sent back to the Indian Territory, and they were effective troopers and fought valiantly and bravely to defend the Indian Territory so they would live in the hopes of returning to their homes. As a matter of fact, the 3rd Indian Home Guard went ahead in October of 1862 and went ahead and helped retake the site of Fort Wayne. Fort Davis, near present day Muskogee, Oklahoma, the Indian Home Guards went ahead and drove off Confederate supporters there in December of 1862. At Fort Gibson, the 2nd Indian Home Guard went ahead and drove off Confederate warriors that were stationed there. So we see this whole push in 1862 where 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Regiments of the Indian Home Guard are really important to Union advances in the Indian Territory. At Cabin Creek, soldiers of the Indian Home Guards helped to save a Union supply train, actually, that had, and the supply trains used to run from Fort Scott to the Indian Territory. So they go ahead and engage against Confederate forces led by Stand Watie, the Cherokee general. At Honey Springs, however, probably the most important Confederate installation in Indian Territory, we see the largest concentration of American Indian and African American troopers that are being used west of the Mississippi. On July 17th, 1863, we see the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd regiments of Indian Home Guard. We see Kansas African American soldiers going ahead and clashing on the field of battle at Honey Springs. And this Union victory is important to really securing Indian territory. And Fort Scott and the Indian Home Guard troops played an important role in that whole process. I encourage you to learn more about the role Fort Scott played in bringing African American and American Indian troopers into service. We'll share some links with you, some important information from Fort Scott. Also, we'll share some information about historic locations you can visit in the future to see where these activities took place and where you can learn more about these very important and sometimes forgotten American warriors. We'll be right back with our wildlife segment.
In 1821, a trade route was opened from Missouri in the United States across prairies and mountains to Mexico. In 2021, we will mark 200 years of epic conflicts and grand adventures, larger-than-life personalities, and sweeping landscapes. Join us on an historic journey. The Santa Fe Trail lives on.
Find us on social media or santafetrail.org. Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an Ihop. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
Welcome back to Around Kansas. I'm Michelle Martin, your co-host. Now, I know this scene behind me looks rather maybe springy or summery, and at this time of the year, we're not really thinking a whole lot about camping. However, we do want to share some news with you. Um, you know, the Kansas Department of Parks and Wildlife are constantly making upgrades to various sites to better serve Kansans who love the outdoors. So we wanted to share this great news with you that at Hillsdale State Park, which is not too far from Paola, that is in Miami County, the Scott Creek Campground upgrades have been finished, and you can now camp there during the winter months. So you can enjoy Kansas in all of its 4 glorious seasons. But today, we're going to go ahead and dip back into the Around Kansas Wildlife Vault because we miss our good friend Frankie C. And we thought you might like to see and hear Frankie too. So we're going to take a look at Wilson Lake with our good friend Frankie C.
Here we are again. It's Wednesday, and this is Around Kansas. In case you just tuned in, ask who are those people? So anyway.
We got to get a billboard. That reminds me, Frank. I was thinking of that again when I was riding out I-70. And there's our friend Brent Harris from Dodge City, who's just all over the place. I talked to Brent on the phone the other day, but it's like, we need a billboard, Frank.
We need a billboard.
We need a billboard.
Big billboard.
A big billboard. That's right. A big billboard.
So anyway, but this show really is about Kansas and its people and places and things to do and all of that.
Around Kansas.
And really there are a lot of places to go in this state. And I'm going to get to do a story about one of those places. And you really should go there. It's an absolutely beautiful place. And it really is well, what do we want to say? Diverse, somewhat in its topography.
And again, for all those folks that think Kansas is flat, and after watching the show for a month or two, I don't know how you could possibly still believe that. But this will put to rest forever about flat Kansas, won't it?
Yes, it will. Well, and part of it is managed by Kansas Parks and Wildlife, and the others by the Corps of Engineers as well. And so it's both federal and Kansas managed. But nevertheless, there's all kinds of wildlife, there's all kinds of recreational activity and all that. But I'm getting ahead of the story.
And as you will see, it's a perfect place for photographers.
Oh, yes.
So the photographers, we're just getting so many gorgeous photos from around the state. Share yours with us on our website, on our Facebook page around Kansas. Email them to us, but we love seeing the photographs that you take all over the state of these gorgeous places.
Well, and we'll probably use a lot of Greg Rood's work in this particular story.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. We love you, Greg. You do amazing stuff.
Whenever folks claim Kansas is flat, pull out one of Greg Rudd's photos of the jagged landscape surrounding Wilson Lake. It's one of those scenes that make the unknowing scratch their heads in disbelief, and it's only minutes north of Interstate 70 on the Post Rock Scenic Byway west of K232. Located in the heart of the Smoky Hills, Wilson State Park is located in Russell County with a small arm extending into Lincoln County. The Saline River is both the reservoir's primary inflow in the west and the outflow to the east. Smaller tributaries include Elm Creek, which flows from the south into the western part of the reservoir, and Hell Creek, which feeds the reservoir's southeastern arm. The Corps of Engineers manages 3 parks at Wilson Lake: Lucas Park, Minooka Park, and Sylvan Park. Lucas Park is located on the north shore of the reservoir's eastern end and includes the Rocktown Natural Area. Minooka Park, named after the Oto word for good earth, lies on the south shore of the central part of the reservoir. Sylvan Park lies below Wilson Dam immediately northeast of the reservoir. Both Lucas Park and Minooka Park host swimming beaches and boat ramps. All 3 parks include hiking trails and camping facilities. The Corps of Engineers also operates a visitor center located below Wilson Dam near Sylvan Park. Considered by many to be the most beautiful in the state, Wilson Reservoir features a rugged shoreline punctuated by scenic cliffs and rocky outcrops. The park and surrounding wildlife area offer the opportunity to view and photograph deer, pheasant, waterfowl, songbirds, and fur bearers. Wilson Reservoir offers excellent white bass and striped bass angling. The Cedar Trail in the Oto area is a 1-mile loop with a concrete surface and is great for a leisurely, low-stress walk. The 25.5-mile-long Switchgrass bike trail, that's the Switchgrass bike trail, is popular with mountain bikers to pursue this challenging activity. The Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks operates Wilson State Park, located on the south shore of the reservoir's eastern end. The park is divided into 2 areas by the reservoir's southeastern arm, the Hell Creek area on the west side and the Oto area on the east side. The Hell Creek area hosts a marina. Both areas include hiking trails, swimming beaches, boat ramps, and camping facilities. Hunting is permitted on the public land around the reservoir, although it is restricted in certain areas. Wilson Wildlife Area is located on the upper end of the reservoir. The 8,000-plus acre public hunting area is made up of rugged rolling hills of native prairie cropland and riparian timber along the Saline River, Cedar Creek, Turkey Creek, and Elm Creek. The area has a waterfowl refuge that was established in 1996.
Howdy, I'm Seth Hayes, and welcome to my hometown, from then to now. Council Grove has a rich history, as deep as the prairie tallgrass. Spend the day visiting 25 historic sites, or explore the unique shops and restaurants, or mosey out of town along the Santa Fe Trail. You all visit my hometown, Council Grove, in the heart of the Flint Hills.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
Welcome back to Around Kansas. I'm Michelle Martin, your co-host. Deb is off today with laryngitis. I know, we can't believe she lost her voice. We hope she gets it back soon. Today, in our fun segment, I am going to stay in Fort Scott because I want to share with you one of the most amazing events you need to try to take in during the upcoming holiday season, and some places in Fort Scott that you'll enjoy visiting when you go to Fort Scott National Historic Site for their annual Candlelight Tour. Yes, it is getting close to Candlelight Tour time, folks. And if you've never been to Fort Scott National Historic Site in December for the Candlelight Tour, you will want to put this on your list of things you must do. And I say that, and I'm very biased, and I will admit it, because for many years I lived in Fort Scott, and as a volunteer at Fort Scott National Historic Site, participated in the tour. And it truly is probably the largest undertaking of the year at the fort, and it involves the most number of volunteers, and it is truly spectacular. Imagine, if you will, all of the beautiful buildings of the fort lit up only by candle lantern. Imagine going from location to location and stepping back in time with over 100 living history interpreters who are clothed in 19th century attire, sharing the stories of the fort with you. So you get to step back into time. You get to see what life was like for soldiers, officers' wives, the surgeons, the laundresses, the teamsters, the sutlers, the ministers, all of those folks who called that place their home. They will share their stories with you. Every year, the Candlelight Tour is the first weekend in December. And this year, the Candlelight Tours will take place on the 3rd and 4th of December. The tours begin in the evening, and a tour group leaves anywhere from every 15 to 30 minutes. And you have a guide who takes you from location to location and sets up the scene for you. Now, this year, to ensure that everyone stays safe, the scenes will all be held outdoors. So you will want to check the weather and dress appropriately. Now, I can tell you, I can remember years participating in Candlelight Tour where it was actually quite balmy and everyone was comfortable. And I can remember years where even the indoor scenes, our teeth were chattering in between groups and we were trying to warm our fingers and toes and noses. It was so cold. So check that weather forecast. But to participate in the tour, you will need to visit the website for the Fort Scott National Historic Site. We'll share that in our links. So you can contact them and purchase your tickets. You can purchase them over the phone with a credit card, or you can go into the fort and pick them up in person. But you will need to have your tickets to be able to participate. And the ticket price, quite frankly, folks, is really a bargain for the amount of work and effort that goes into the event and what you get out of it. It is a fantastic deal. So make sure that you put the annual Candlelight Tour at Fort Scott National Historic Site on your list of things to do this holiday season. And tell them Deb and Michelle from Around Kansas sent you. And if you go, wave to everybody for me. I miss all my Fort Scott family. It is truly my favorite event of the living history calendar year at the site. So while you're in Fort Scott, going to partake in the Candlelight Tour, plan to spend some time. Go during the day, walk the streets of the historic downtown, and make sure you visit the shops and eateries that are there. In particular, if you like good pizza and sandwiches and salad, go visit the great folks at Papa Don's. They are not too far from the fort, and it is not uncommon during event weekends at the fort for locals to walk in and see living history interpreters in their 19th century clothing sitting, munching on a great piece of pizza, having a salad, having a beverage. So visit Papa Don's. They've got some fantastic food. And if you are a coffee fanatic like me, visit the lovely people at Common Ground. Common Ground coffee is fantastic. And I know I've said before on the show, when I lived in Fort Scott, I wish we would have had Common Ground. I would have probably spent all of my time there as a professor at the college. I would have been sitting there grading papers and working on lesson plans. I would have loved it. It is one of my go to places. They have amazing coffee. They do have, from what I hear, excellent baked goods. I can't partake, but they have great baked goods. They also have soups and sandwiches and salads. And they've recently moved into a new building, and it is beautiful. We'll provide a link to their Facebook page and their website for you. Not only that, visit some of the antique stores and the other little boutique and resale shops in Fort Scott in the downtown area. They are charming and have offer you a wide variety of items that you can pick up for your gifting. You know, don't get caught in that supply chain trap this year, folks. Shop local. Show our local Kansas communities that love that we have for them, and get your gifts local. Fort Scott has some great antique stores, some lovely little gift shops and boutiques, some great resale shops. Also, make sure that you take some time to visit the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes. It is a combination museum and educational center right downtown in the heart of downtown. And it is a wonderful opportunity for you to stop and learn more history about individuals who we should know more about, that have sometimes been left out of the pages of history. So visit the folks there too. While you're at it, if you decide you want to stay in Fort Scott, obviously there are hotel chains available, but if you want the vintage, unique charm of the city, make sure you stay at the Courtland. The Courtland Inn and Spa is also right downtown. It is a historic hotel. I've stayed at the Courtland many times, and it is a lovely step back in time. And the proprietors of the Courtland are fantastic. So spread some of that hotel dollars with our local hotel owners as well. You can also go ahead and find some fantastic Mexican on the south end of town at El Charro. That is everybody's go to in Fort Scott. But if you're looking for some good diner food, visit the folks at New Grill. That is also where the locals love to hang out. The New Grill is fantastic. It is that kind of 1950s retro diner. Has great home cooking. You can go in one area and sit in booths or at tables, or you can go into one side of the grill and belly up and sit at the bar. So, show Fort Scott some love this holiday season by visiting the folks at Fort Scott National Historic Site for the annual Candlelight Tour, and take in all of the other great sights and sounds of Fort Scott, Kansas. We'll be back next week with another show, and let's keep our fingers crossed that Deb is back with us so we can have some fun with her next week. Bye bye, everybody.